Welcome to Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations. I'm your host, Lisa Huff. Over the last 5 years, I've coached hundreds of hairstylists and beauty industry professionals, helping them work their dream schedules exclusively with their dream clientele and earn their dream income, all while fostering genuine connections and lifelong friendships inside the beauty industry. In this podcast, we dive deep into abundance, manifestation, business building strategies, and creating a life that you are truly proud of, both behind the chair and at home. Are you ready to embark on a journey of personal growth, success, and sisterhood? Then hit that subscribe button now and get ready to experience the pure magic of Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations. I am here with my friend Leisha. We are clearly in a different setting than usual. We're not via Zoom, which is really cool. This is my first guest podcast episode where we're together in person. There's a really cool place in the town that I live in called Yoga Lab, and they have like a co-working space. They have this podcast room you can rent out. And Leisha, we're going to get into why she's here, but she has been local to me for the last few months. And we have been meeting here and having our work meetings here. And we were like, we should use that room while you're still in town and we should record a podcast. So if you guys could see behind the camera, there's like lights, there's cords everywhere. We brought separate mics. We tried to figure out how to record on one mic. We can't figure it out. So audio, hopefully we did quite a few test runs. Audio should be good, but I just kind of want to acknowledge where we are. That feels like natural to get into it. So we're probably going to be batch recording a couple episodes today, so we'll see how much time we have. But this episode specifically, I want to shine a light on what Leisha is doing in our industry. She has a really cool concept that she's been bringing to life called the Traveling Hairstylist. So I know we just did a take, but go ahead and give a quick little synopsis again of how you've ended up here, and then we'll deep dive into all the parts of it.
Yeah, so I'm Leisha, and to kind of give a brief summary of how this has all kind of come about and how really just even my start with Stylist Soul Tribe. I've known Lisa for a little while just through Thrivers, and then I joined Stylist Soul Tribe a few years now. And when I joined Stylist Soul Tribe, I was a suite stylist. And, I had a pretty good business at the point I joined to kind of help just with, fine-tune things, boundaries, and just really find a sense of community. And through that, really even when I joined, I felt like I knew that I was kind of looking for something a little bit more or beyond, or I felt like where my current position was, I knew wasn't like my final position or anything.
Totally fulfilled.
Yeah. And so through that, and obviously like having my tribe calls and diving deeper, I feel like there was a certain point where this idea finally kind of came in and it really blossomed within Soul Tribe, and having a community was really great to kind of like pour into it and craft it and fine tune it. And now it's been almost exactly a year since I decided to leave my loft, my full clientele. We have a property still in Ohio, but we moved out of our property and moved into an RV, and fully am now pursuing the Traveling Hairstylist. And obviously there's been a lot that's happened since then, but yeah, it's kind of surreal actually to be in this timing and just where it's all kind of come from. And yeah, that's a little bit about where that started.
Yeah. So to give you guys a little bit of perspective, if it's coming up on a year, 1 year ago today, had you left yet or no?
Not quite left yet, but almost.
You were working on the RV. Yeah, okay, so let's say, but it happened like during a vision casting. So when did you leave?
It was basically like almost like January 1st. So I'm like a month out from when I did my last client.
Okay. Yeah. So to give you guys perspective, let's say a year and a half ago, Leisha was working behind the chair, had a very full clientele. Yeah. She struggled with her pricing. In a good way. Like she was built up to what everybody seeks is success. She had a 6-figure business behind the chair. She specialized in extension. She was moving and grooving, making incredible money. It had its own stresses. We're going to talk about this on the podcast a lot, because you think you want to get to a certain point, but then next level, next devil, like these things happen. And fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Leisha still felt like there was just something more. And we had a vision casting workshop 2 years ago, then would it be, or just 1 year ago? It was 2 years ago. No, it would have been
2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
And Leisha's like, I have such a hard time dreaming that big, thinking that far ahead. I'd be like, 5 years from now, if money wasn't an issue, if you could have anything you wanted, what would you want? And she's like, I really, really struggle with that. And I remember that moment. And now Leisha like works with me. Our relationship has really evolved since then, but she was a Soul Tribe member. We were on this call and she was like, I really have a hard time seeing that. I'm like, I really want you to like close your eyes right now. Your alarm goes off. It's 5 years in the future. Who's around you? Like, where are you? What do you see? But that wasn't the big magic idea quite yet, right? That was starting to brew it.
No, it was like, and really to go even deeper than that before even going into that, I feel like I remember even specifically, I knew when I joined Stylist Soul Tribe, I knew that there was something more that I was looking for. But I even remember in the midst of like in that time thinking that because I was struggling so much to see the vision, I actually can recall thinking like, well, let me just really focus on my business and like continue to build that, because maybe that like why will eventually spark for me and I'll be where I need to be.
Also, I don't think a lot of people know this. You did live in an RV previously.
I did.
So you would kind of like yearn back on those days. You love that. So I guess tell that story. Go even back further.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know really what you were doing back then.
So when I first started in the industry, I worked in a salon for
What year is this?
2011 is when I started. And I started in a salon. I was a commissioned stylist at that point. I was in the salon for about 6 years. And it was the only salon I had worked in at that point. And, you know, that was well before there was so much like online education and like even really before like Instagram was really taking off to kind of know what could be out there, like the possibilities. And I kind of ended up in a situation where I almost became essentially the salon manager, and I didn't ask for that. Like the owner was did have some health problems, but she was kind of in and out. Her husband kind of took a lot of the control, but he wasn't in the industry. So it was like there was so much kind of things that just didn't line up. And I just grew really unhappy. I was busy, but it wasn't really clients that I always like loved or services that I always really loved. And I got to a point where, and also simultaneously, my husband, now boyfriend then, he had been working in a job for about 8 years in customer service. And for anyone who works in customer service like that, and like it's very different. Yeah. And he was also getting to the point where he was like, we were both like, we need to change. Like this is not working for us and we need to change. And I actually was like ready to leave the whole industry. Like I was like, maybe this is not what I thought it was.
That?
This was 2016 when we started talking about this. And I always had, I'm a Sagittarius, I'm a free spirit. Like I have a wanderlust soul. So I've always just wanted to travel and I wanted to like fully just grab life and experience as much as I could. And I remember specifically pulling into the first house that my boyfriend then and I, or my husband now, boyfriend then, that we had. And in the driveway, looking at him and telling him, in a year, I want to sell this house and leave our jobs.
I just got chills.
I know. It was like, I still vividly remember that moment so clearly. And my husband was looking at me like I was crazy. Like he was like, what are you talking about? We cannot do that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of convincing, but we, at that point, we'd just been like saving up money because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we were like looking for. And we did. Almost exactly a year after that, we both left our jobs. We had bought a different RV at that point, and we moved into it. And we left for 6 months, and we didn't work. We didn't do anything. We literally just lived off our savings and down to like everything that we had.
Yeah.
I don't regret a single bit of that. But when we did eventually come back because we ran out of money, and we also, I had a family member who was going through cancer, and so we were kind of coming back to also be there, and we were like, okay, well, we kind of need to restart somewhere. And actually I really loved that restart because it was like everything that I kept feeling like I couldn't leave behind, I left behind, like hardcore. And then it was like we took this 6 months to just like have some of the best times of our lives. And I came back with literally $200 in our account, and I went into a salon. I found this owner through some friends, and she just had like the best energy when I met her. But she was a booth rent, but I loved her so much because she was almost the exact opposite of the ownership that I had before, that I was like, I'm just gonna make this work. And 2 months after I got into that salon is when I joined Thrivers.
Wow.
So I put myself in a pretty like risky situation. We didn't have any money. I had to literally move.
But really risky compared to what you were just doing.
Yeah,
It was more stable than what you were doing. But clearly
True.
that's like your personality.
Yeah,
You do that.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, you know, at that time, we were living literally in my parents' basement for it was like 4 months until but even then, thinking about that, within 4 months we were able to already move into like it was a real cheap apartment, like super basic apartment. And we really kind of took that year and we were just like hitting the ground running. I really was hitting the ground running in my business, and it was like thriving really fast. Within it, we were only in that apartment a year before we bought our second house, the house that we still have technically.
Wow. Yeah.
And I feel like my business really, really skyrocketed. And I think I just had this whole new sense of like what I was looking for. And I was able to fulfill so much of like my soul. But obviously, I knew there was something more. Yeah. Like there got a point where I was like,
isn't that true though? Like you seek out this success, and then once you hit what you think it's supposed to be, you're like, well, this doesn't feel as good as I thought it was going to feel, or it has its new challenges. And then when going back to that vision casting workshop, when I was saying like, where would you be? And you're like, I honestly miss living in the RV. I want to be by the mountains. I see my dogs there. I don't know what that would look like, but that's what I see. I'm like, okay, interesting. So that was a year before. And then I guess you probably know this timeline better, because then, what was it, March is when you approached me and asked for a job. She's like, you're a one-woman show. I'd really love to help you. Here are these ideas I have for you. Like, I'd love to help you, which has been literally fucking life-changing because we're coming up on 2 years of that now. So we've obviously grown really, really close through that. I guess then, when did the Traveling Hairstylist drop in? Because I'm telling you guys, I guess Soul Tribe was a big part of it. Yeah. But Leisha had this idea. We did a hot seat, and before I knew it, her house was rented out. She owned an RV. They're remodeling, and she's like, "I'm leaving," and I'm like, "Whoa, where? What are you doing? Where are you going? What is happening?" So I guess tell me that from your perspective, like when the Traveling Hairstylist idea came. And what made you, I guess, clearly you do this. Yeah. When you get something in your head, you move.
I know.
But like, what was that perspective like for you?
Yeah. Gosh, it's so crazy actually rethinking of all of that timeline, because I often think that I'm like not where I want to be by a certain point, but then I'm like, holy crap, we should slow down.
A year ago.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But yeah, I definitely am that kind of personality type. And I think it really comes from growing up. I constantly heard things from my family of like, oh, I wish I could have done this, or I wish I would have taken that chance. And that really, really stuck with me. And I think shaped...
You consciously remember being a kid being like, well, if you wish it, why don't you do it?
Yeah, like I think that really shaped my personality to where it's like, if I say I want something, I'm not going to just
look back and have all those regrets.
Yeah. So that is definitely a personality type of mine. I get that that's definitely not everybody. And some people were like, whoa, what the heck? But I remember that vision casting workshop, and it was like, I could tell there was like something that started to open up. And at that point, I couldn't completely see what it was, but I knew that there was something that I needed to do to like help sustain the in-between, which is where I started. I'm like, okay, I was so passionate about Soul Tribe and what you were doing and just the community. Like, it was insane how much I was like finding who I was through Soul Tribe, even just in that first like year. And so I'm like, I want to be on board with something that I know I can still pour into while pouring into, you know, whatever it is that I'm creating at this point. So that's when I kind of approached you. And then between like March and May, because I got married also that year too, something in that time started to form, because like I always wanted to be able to travel and do hair.
Real quick, we also, I believe, had the retreat in April of that
year. We did.
Did you know about the Traveling Hairstylist at the retreat?
I think it was like there, but not fully there again, because I kept thinking like, how can I travel and service clients? And I kept like, so it was like I knew that I wanted to almost like be back on the road, and I knew I wanted to be like a traveling hairstylist, but at that time I kept thinking of it for clients.
Yeah, or you like have to build this massive following where you end up in a town and that many people know you, they want to get their hair done by you. That's very hard to create.
Yeah, and that's what I kept struggling with. And I wish I could remember like the exact moment that like it clicked for me, where it was like, holy shit, no, you need to do this for stylists, not clients. Like this is where that missing piece was. And at first I kind of just took it as like, thinking about pain points in the industry and realizing that there's nobody that really talks about leaves in the industry. And it's one of the more like stressful things to think about. If you happen to break your arm, or even having a baby can be so hard on our businesses.
And is it fair to say that you were talking to so many stylists that you saw that happening, and it just was like, oh,
I worked with a lot of stylists that were like also went through different situations. My best friend was pregnant at the time, and she's also a hairstylist. And even just hearing these things, I think I was just hearing it at the right time, that something kind of clicked for me. And once I put it out there, like I did a hot seat in Stylist Soul Tribe, the ideas that people gave me, it was like it opened up a whole new realm of like, wait, this could really be for like so much
big,
more.
Yeah.
And this could be such a huge thing for the industry that I don't even think I realized this idea that I have.
God, this is so
cool
and
to, like,
unpack back
Yeah,
up.
I know.
Because in the
I know.
moment, we didn't realize how big.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of did. We were excited.
Yeah.
But it's wild to think back on it like that.
Yeah. And so by like June of 2022, I knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I bought an RV a month later.
Wow.
And I was already planning, and I was like, all right, when's my last day in the salon going to be? When are we going to leave? At that point, we almost thought we were going to leave like last October. That was not a thing. And then on top of that, I this is like my personality. I told my husband, I'm like, okay, like, so let's buy an old RV and like completely renovate it. So we were like renovating this RV.
Yeah.
I'm planning my like last, months in the salon.
Your wedding also.
Well, we had already gotten married at that
Okay.
point. Yeah. So we just were coming off of our wedding, but we
Okay.
still had our honeymoon to go.
Okay.
And it was like crazy. Like that
Yeah.
like summer and fall of 2022.
So much
there
happened.
was so much that was happening. I was like moving on to the next thing, on the next thing, on to the next thing. And yeah, and then I ended my salon clients right before Christmas.
Okay.
And then we left January 9th of 2023.
Okay.
That was delayed a little bit, but there were so many things that delayed it because we were rushing through this.
Delay. I mean, how quick did that happen?
I know.
When the idea came, it felt.
Yeah.
I remember talking to you on a weekly basis, and you'd be
Yeah.
like, "Fuck, like the RV's not going to be done yet."
Yeah.
And all this, like, it felt so slow. Isn't it? Isn't time like a trip? It feels so slow when each of these hiccups come up, and then even on your first trip, there was lots of breakdowns of the
gosh,
RV
so much.
and so many, and pricey things that came up, and that was so stressful. But you still were like, "This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm going to continue doing it." So I guess let's talk about a little bit more, like, we've given the idea, what exactly at this point in time, and this is going to be really cool to listen back on 5 years, at this point in time, what is the traveling hairstylist in your mind?
Yeah. So, and that's what's interesting too, is when I left, the traveling hairstylist already is so different than what it is now. And that's even kind of wild to think about because, like I said, it's not even been a full year yet. I'm coming up on a year, but it's not been a full year yet. And I feel like I've already seen the changes that have been made. But that's the thing too, when you do something that where you don't already have sort of like a
blueprint.
Yeah, a blueprint.
It's
Like
never been
I'm
done
literally
before.
This is what's so crazy about this. And this is where like I have a lot of doubt that comes up with this because I feel like, who am I to be creating something so innovative in this industry? So I definitely have doubts, and I questioned this whole journey so many times, like so many times. So I know that it sounds like I'm just like moving through it and staying positive, but that's not, it
There's
doesn't always
mental
look like that.
breakdowns all along the
Absolutely.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously when I started, it was very different. And now I am at a stage where I feel really clear on like what the purpose is, like who I'm serving, how I'm serving people, and what that kind of looks like. So really to kind of give you an overview of just what the traveling hairstylist is. It is an alternative service for stylists by stylists, by experienced stylists. Yeah. And this is for anyone who is looking for coverage for maternity leave, for any kind of medical leave, sometimes even bereavement, like things like that, where if
even
you...
long vacations.
Yeah,
We even talked about that. We have some
trips.
Soul Tribe members that travel for 2 months at a time,
Yeah, like if you were going to be out of the salon for like 6 weeks or more, depending on your type of clientele you service, like where you would be in a bind of like trying to either having to refer your clients out or have them taken care of. And so this is a way that you can actually indirectly nurture your clientele by bringing in a experienced stylist who can know your procedures, know your, your amenities, like know your space, and come into directly your space as well, so that your clients have someone with experience who can adapt and be able to come in as an extension of you in your space that they're already comfortable with and be serviced and taken care of. And so that you can continue to build, like I said, nurturing your clientele, but also just keep security of your clients as well. And
to put that into perspective, like say I broke my arm. I couldn't service my clients. Or if I've had a maternity leave, I've had these experiences, you find the people around you that you know are not going to mess your client's hair up, you know, because that's just a real thing. It's typically, I hate to even say it like this, but sometimes the stylists who are available and can take on a full clientele, there's a reason for that, you know. So it's hard to pass along, you know, so you find your closest people who you feel like they do your hair, you know them, you trust them, but they're already so booked with clients. Or you find people that you're not as close with. And then there's also that scarcity and that fear of like, are my clients going to leave me? Are they going to prefer this space? Are they going to realize, like, is the stylist just going to ask them to pre-book before they leave? And what if they never come back to me? And I think it's always been kind of like an industry standard that we've said when you take a leave, expect to lose like 10% or something like that of your clients. And this really is that solution where your clients are taken care of and you don't have to worry about a sneaky stylist or even a stylist who's not intentionally, but your client's just testing the water somewhere else and actually liking it. So it's definitely a great, you know, resource for that. And I think that's such a, again, innovative. Why has that not been done before?
Yeah.
So smart. So where have you been? Obviously, I know this, but talk everybody through what spaces you've been to, one from like the cool travel standpoint of it, and the different roles you've taken on.
Yeah. And because they even like put that, what you just said too, like there are three main pain points when you go on a leave, and that is your clientele, that is the security of your business, and that is income. And so it's tapping into each of those things, because the biggest things that we all know somebody, maybe you've experienced, where, people had a leave and they are expecting to come back to full clientele. And I mean, I've even heard of stylists even saying that they lost like 50% of their clients when they came back because they also had a leave where they ended up having to add a couple of weeks than what they thought.
What if you have a medical issue?
Happen.
What if your baby ends up in the NICU?
Or you hear the other side of it where they had somebody that they referred to and either the client didn't feel comfortable. And this is interesting position that I get to be in because I'm servicing these clients, they tell me these things that they feel with past leaves. And a lot of the things that I would hear from these clients would be that they feel like a burden to someone else's clientele because they weren't looking to get this client. So either they feel like a burden to where like they can't get in or things like that, or in other cases, you know, you might lose your clients to this site. So there's so many things like that we fear and maybe don't even like know that can happen or that can happen. So there's a lot of variables. So that's kind of where, again, like the Traveling Hairstylist really speaks to those. But to kind of go into what you were saying, so far this year, because I usually like to be in a place for about 3 months, I started off this year in Phoenix, Arizona, like in Gilbert area outside of Phoenix. And I actually kind of started off as like a co-stylist assistant to a booth renter who was getting ready to get married. So she was going to be out of the salon for a little bit.
Honeymoon.
But then that quickly turned into, there was also a stylist who was going on maternity leave, but she was still kind of a newer stylist. So she was getting a lot of the new like salon clients, but also at that time of year, Arizona is also like a tourism area. They get a lot of people that come in that live there for a few months. So I started off at that for kind of like the first half of my time there, but the second half I was covering her clients for a leave, as well as sort of just like a tourism salon stylist, like a temporary stylist for temporary clients, which is kind of one way I didn't even like think of that could happen, that I kind of discovered along the way. But it makes so much sense. So much sense. So that's where I started out there. And then I went to Asheville, North Carolina. There was an owner in Asheville she was actually selling the salon, and she was kind of an owner who was going back into a suite. And so, but she was very upfront about her team about that. And so she had lost a lot of her team, but she was a busy salon. Like she'd been established there for a while. She had a lot of clients. So she really needed almost like just an additional stylist, but a temporary additional stylist. And so that really lined up to work well. So I was taking full salon clients at that point, and it was a really beautiful salon that I worked at for there. And now I'm finishing up here.
Real quick before you jump to Grace, because obviously those have been different situations. And I know in the moment you didn't love having to find those salons. But a lot of people are probably like, well, how'd you find these salons? And in Leisha's head, originally it was going to be, I put this out and everybody requests it. And I think it's important to talk about those growing pains. And it's not what you think it's going to be. So you got to Arizona and you got to Asheville. And what did you do to find those spaces?
Okay, so that is an important part because, like I said, I left, and it was like everything that I was putting out also was being put out at the same time that I left. So it wasn't like I took, months to start to build the name of the Traveling Hairstylist. I basically wanted to be my own guinea pig and test the waters and see, because there were a lot of things that I'm like, does this work? Would this work? Like, what would this look like? So it really was a lot of like trial and error. And I'm so forever grateful to the salon and Gilbert, who just like, they heard what I was doing. They're like, what the heck? This is the coolest thing.
Because it started with DMs. Leisha's like, I'm going to DM a bunch of salons when I get there or before I get there and just tell them what I'm doing. And that was kind of crickets. And that was hard. You're like, oh, fuck, is this going to work? And then I remember vividly you being in your car, being like, I'm going to walk into these salons. I'm so nervous. It's going to be so awkward. And she just introduced herself and said what her vision was and what she was trying to do. And that has worked really, really well for you.
That's the thing is, like, I feel so passionate and so clear about what I'm doing that I knew that if I could just talk to somebody, I know that, like, people will believe in this. As much as, like, that, like, your doubt wants to tell you otherwise, I knew, like, in my core that, like, no, this is important. People need to hear this. And so, like, when I was trying to email and DM, I'm like, no, I need to just get face-to-face with people. They need to see me. They need to, like, feel my energy. They need to like hear my voice, like things like that. And that was really helpful. I mean, my first day of doing that, I found the salon and I ended up in Arizona. So it wasn't like that was a referral situation. I didn't know any of them. They didn't know me. Like it was a very like just organic kind of connection. And that's kind of what that had to look like at first. So even with like Asheville, I did the same thing. I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to bother with like DMs and emails. I'm going to go out. I kind of scouted salons, which is also a really fascinating process because I get to look at salons like clients do. So that's always intriguing to me. But my first day again, I came across a salon and that's where I ended up. So I do think there's a lot of power in if you really believe in something, like one way may not work, the second may not work, but like you have to sometimes just put yourself completely out there, totally as scary as that freaking can be, because it was so scary. And I remember pulling you like, I don't know.
Like, this is so weird. I'm sweating.
It was bad. But but it did. And so now that I've been able to get a couple of those experiences under, my belt and like repertoire, I feel like now I've been able to get to a point where people are starting to pay attention to what this is and starting to know this and relate to it. And so that's where it's brought me to where I'm at now.
So you're in Bloomington or Lincoln now because of a Soul Tribe member.
Who is going on maternity leave. And she's a suite stylist. So I have been fully covering and taking care of her suite and her clients while she is on her leave. So that's what's kind of brought me here. And even kind of going from now I feel like I'm having more people reach out to me and kind of get me set up even going into next year, which is really exciting because this is the space that I somehow thought I was just going to fall into in the beginning, but it doesn't work like that. You have to obviously kind of build up something. So that's kind of like what has brought me here and obviously how we're recording this together.
So, also, can we just talk about Grace? I hope you're listening to this. Thank you for having Leisha come on. Because how wild is it that now we've like been able to be local to each other for a couple months? Like it's just the way things align. It's so weird. It's so crazy. So I still work in Lincoln, Illinois in my studio. You guys heard my, life story about that. I live in Bloomington though, which is like where we're at right now recording. Leisha's working in Lincoln, living in Bloomington. It's just so bizarre how this has worked out. But so freaking cool. So I obviously am in your brain all the time. I know your long-term vision for the Traveling Hairstylists, but now Leisha is at a point where she's booked the first quarter of next year. Yeah. So
well, really first and second quarter, actually. So like now, I don't have an availability until June.
But now she's in the struggle because I guess why don't you tell them what you envision one day the Traveling Hairstylist being, and hopefully the next case scenario of having your first team member, because she does want to grow this to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, I feel like now that it has been a year, I've been in a team-based salon. I've covered leaves, I've covered tourism, and I've been in a sweet salon. So I feel like I've really been able to like I'm so grateful for every single experience that I've had this year, because I have literally learned and taken so much from every single person that I've gotten to work alongside, every single space I've gotten to be in. And that is, again, like that's really crafted the future of traveling hairstylists. So going into next year, my goal is to build it. I want to be able to kind of bring on the first official traveling hairstylist member, which is so crazy to think about. But that's where I want this to be. I think this needs to be a resource that can have a whole team of traveling hairstylists, so that whenever a situation may arise, especially in situations where if you break something, you don't have prep time to like, like,
so in a dream world, 10 years from now, whoever knows, however long it could be. One day this could be like a database where someone breaks their arm, they log in, who knows what it's going to look like, to whatever the traveling hairstylist is. And I hope there's thousands of hairstylists one day who want that flexibility, because that's also something this industry doesn't offer, is you want to build up this clientele and make great money, but then we do sometimes get that urge that like, well, I'm stuck here. This is all I'm ever going to be doing. And I hate to say it like that, because it is such a beautiful place to get to. It does open a new opportunity for stylists everywhere to maybe, hopefully, if this has the need and the demand to be their full-time or part-time gig, which is really cool too.
No, and I've talked to other stylists. Like, I know there's other stylists like me out there who really crave like freedom and flexibility to like an entirely new level. And so that this is kind of a way to not only be able to continue to service our industry as a whole for these situations that can come up with any kind of leave that they can easily tap into and easily trust. And we have so many resources now with forms and videos and things like that to really connect on such a great level.
The internet just makes the world so much smaller.
Yeah, like that's what's great about, before I even step into a place that I go to, I mean, especially with this, where I'm at now is a great example. I mean, I knew the system, I knew like from the start that a client comes in to when they leave, I know exactly what they expect. And that's huge for stylist clients to be able to still have that same experience and be taken care of and know that, you know, their stylist is going to be really happy to come back and prepared for them to come back. So I really want this to kind of continue to tap into the bigger part of the industry. But there's also the other side of it where I'm at, where I know there's other stylists who crave something just a little bit more, and they maybe struggle to find what that is. And this can be such a great opportunity to have that, to experience a lot, like being able to travel. I mean, I'm getting ready to go to Oklahoma City next, and then I'll be in Washington after that. It's like, it's just really exciting. I'm literally all over the place. And I know that there's stylists like that. So it's definitely.
So who would be like the perfect person if someone's listening to this, which I'm putting all my little magic manifestation powers into, if somebody's listening to this in their ear and they're like, oh my God, yes, like who would be the perfect person in your eyes for this?
I mean, if you are, I do think experience is important. So not that you need to be in, 15 years, even if you're in a few years and you've really gotten that taste already for just how salons work. There's so many systems out there. There's so many ways of things. So I do think at least having a few years of experience is important.
And adaptability, because you also have that gift. I even know that because we work together, like, which nobody doubt themselves that they have this. You also have to have the ability to just put yourself in a situation and feel it and just jump in and fill needs where they're needed.
Yeah. So having some of that experience that can give you a lot of like that adaptability and versatility and someone who actually really loves change, because there is kind of obviously going from one place to another. There's so many different things about it, who loves to continue to learn too, because I will also say that I have learned so much that I wasn't already doing, and I had already been a stylist for 12 years, but I've picked up so many just little techniques, like ways that people do things for guest experience, like at each place that I've been to.
I even feel like for like people who are dipping their toes into education, I'm grateful that I get to pick your brain and hear all these places because I have kids. I could never do this, but hear like what you're experiencing. So like my brain just went to, I've never thought of this before, but somebody who's trying to grow as an educator, leave their behind their chair business, be able to travel if you don't have anything tying you down to where you live. And it is such an incredible case study. I mean, you have seen studios, commission salons, booth rental salons, how people are running things, and even you're obviously drawn to like the cream of the crop when you get to an area because you scout out on Instagram. Just getting to plug yourself into those salons, learn everything you can, and then leave and move on to the next thing. Like that is such a cool ability to have.
Yeah, I feel like I have like this wealth of knowledge just from like what I've been able to see and work with, which is really cool. And it does kind of play into like a lot of different roles too, especially for even just the community. But yeah, I definitely feel like if you are someone looking for that and you're kind of looking for just something a little bit more, and this could play into things like maybe you have a family member across the country that you need to go and care for a few months, but you still have to make money. You know, this could also play out for, it's not like you have to be a traveling hairstylist forever. I mean, you could literally tap into this maybe at just certain times in your life.
Okay, and now I'm going to get really big with it. What if somebody needed to go care for somebody in a different state and then they hired a different traveling hairstylist to take care of their clients?
Traveling stylist inception.
That's wild.
I know.
That really is so cool. Okay. So I want to make sure the people that are hearing this, we have the stylists who need a leave, know that you exist. That's what I want to know. And then we have the stylists who are drawn to this. So I also want to say, because I'm in your brain and I know the struggles you have, your first team member is not going to get, I mean, it's going to be a trial and error kind of situation. But I also think that, because Leisha's always like, it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do I wait till I have a wait list of stylists who need a traveling hairstylist before I hire someone? Do I hire someone first? So I really just want to implore anybody who feels very called to this to reach out to Leisha, because there is going to be some like testing the waters, and you learned from experience. Say someone needs to go to Kansas City to take care of their grandma. Leisha does have some systems and strategies that have worked of how to just walk into a salon and try it out.
Yeah, I do. And that's kind of, obviously there's a lot of details that come into this. Licensing is one thing, and I have all of the resources for that. I have contracts in place. I have, onboarding forms on place, onboarding checklists, offboarding things. Like I have really taken that time to build everything leading up to it and even coming off of it, that I want to be able to have a stylist come in who doesn't have to worry about the logistics of it, but they just want to, whether it's something that they need to care for or they are just looking for an experience. And that's where I think I can see down the road where there could be like a huge database, but in this time in between, I think it really is going to be a partnership. I want it to be obviously everything that someone would want it to be coming in. And I'm sure a lot of things will be crafted around the first person that comes in and around the second person, the third person. And that is something that I think that because like I have taken the time to take care of the logistics, the fine tuning, the little things here, those are things that I don't want a team member to worry about. I want it to be able to kind of be like the full experience where they're kind of going into, making sure it works for them, making sure it works for the purpose of like the traveling hairstylist. So I think it is a very craftable role that could work for a lot of different things. And just because I live in an RV doesn't mean that you have to like live in an RV either. There's so many temporary housing situations. I mean, Airbnb does like monthly rental stuff. There's literally so many things. So it really can work in a lot of circumstances. And I think it's really going to take just chatting and having a conversation to kind of feel like, okay, like what do you need from this? Here's what I can give for you. Like, and figuring that out.
That's so cool. Okay. One thing, this kind of a random thing to plug in, but it's popped in my head a few times, so I feel like we should touch on it. Obviously, people want to know like money with all this, and I think that even trips you up because you're like, I don't know exactly how much I can pay them right off the bat, because she really has been testing it. But Leisha's goal, like where her heart stands, is she wants this to be financially beneficial for everybody involved. So she ideally wants the stylist to make money in the situation she's in right now. So I guess kind of break down what you're doing thus far for somebody that's like, either I want to hire you or I want to come be a team member. Like, how's the money work?
So let's start with like, if you are someone who wants to hire the traveling hairstylist, I have now found that there just needs to be kind of two different paths right from the start, because I mean, I have a leave coming up where I have a stylist who has a PFML. She lives in a state where that's offered her, so she actually cannot make any income, but she has a booth rent. So in her circumstance, nurturing her clients and the security of clients is still so, so, so important to her. So she's bringing me in and I'm essentially like subleasing her space. So I'm just like I would be renting within my own space. I'm paying her rent. I'm caring for her clients. I can be there to assist with any other salon clients if need be. And I am bringing home the remainder of that income after taxes, obviously, just like any kind of normal booth renter. So that's kind of one way that it can go. Like if you're not really concerned about the income portion, if you already kind of have income coming your way with maybe a type of like paid leave that you have, there's still, like I said, the security and the nurturing that with your clientele that is still so, so important. And then there's another way where maybe basically I've kind of done it on like daily rates and it's based on a lot of different things. I have a base rate that starts at $275 a day, but because there's so many people have different specialties, so many people live in different areas, like that's where it's kind of like it really is upon a discussion. Like when I work with somebody, they fill out a form to give me a basic overdraft of like their business and what they do, their like hourly rate, things like that. And then we actually hop on a call and really just discuss that all in, in place there and make sure that it works for not only me, but for the stylist. It's important to work for both. It has to be kind of a good partnership with that. And then from there, we decide if that's something we want to proceed with or not. I've had calls with people like where we found that it didn't either work for them or it didn't work for me. I've had both happen so far. And even through those calls, like it helps me learn a lot to continue to craft, whichever. So even if it's something you're curious about, but you don't know exactly what it would look like, that's the best way to find out. It's not like there's a charge for that or anything like that. It's really just like
a discovery call.
Yeah, it's a discovery call to see if like, could this be a good option for you? And then upon that, and then I'm kind of coming into your space. I have obviously all of my supplies and tools. Things like back bar gets discussed. I've worked in some situations where I supply the back bar. I've worked in some situations where the back bar is supplied.
It's fully customizable.
Everything gets customized into that price. So that's kind of two ways that works out for.
I want to word this, and maybe everybody caught what you said, but I just want to one, it was brave for you to even say the 275 because this is going to be funny years from now. I know that will not be the right one day, but whatever. Leisha's original goal before this one, where the girl was like, I don't need money. And she's like, oh God, I didn't even think that was a possibility. But her original goal is to like find the numbers and find out where the stylist can still have a profit at that. Obviously, we have to make sure the numbers like crunch and make sense for everybody, but she's so clearly driven by like living this lifestyle that say whatever the day rate is, the hope is that there's still profit left over at the end of the day for the stylist, which is unheard of.
Yeah, that's an important thing I kind of totally missed. I just realized. But when doing a daily rate, any overage that is made does stay with you. So there is still, with the current, I'm doing a daily rate with the current leave that I'm in. And she's had enough overage every month to continue to pay her booth rent.
So cool.
So, and some weeks it's been like, that's just been it. Some weeks there might be a little bit extra. But like, that's the nice thing of it is it's like you're not having to plan ahead for, okay, I need rent this week and this rent this week and building that. So there is the potential to just like be able to not only, again, like have a little bit of that income stay in your account. So that's kind of the two ways that can work for if you were looking for the service. As far as the other side of it, again, like because I haven't brought a team member on, that is something that is kind of to be discussed, but essentially to come on because I'm still kind of facilitating a lot and like I've kind of built the onboarding process, the offboarding process. Basically, there would just be like a percentage taken. It's a low percentage. I think it would be.
It'll get worked out.
Yeah, it'll get kind of worked out. But that's kind of something, again, like it's very customizable, But I do want it to feel like you can essentially step right into that role and work. And a lot of everything else, the logistics is kind of built for you.
And everyone's business is so different. And now we have the privilege of, because of Soul Tribe, and you really get to see behind the scenes a lot too. We have stylists in Soul Tribe. I bet some are making $40,000 a year. I have someone that just told me that she's on track to make $325,000 this year alone.
Yeah.
So like it's so different for everyone. If you're a salon owner and you bring Leisha in even for like temporary time and you pay her a day rate, there's definitely profit at the end of that. So it all is so customizable. And I know that your intention, and I just want people to really hear that, is just to make sure it works for everybody.
Yeah.
Can it work for you? Can it work for them? Can it work for the clients? And I think that that's the only way to do it. She's tried to like really build a system around that. And I'm like, there's going to be no way to figure that out until you just get in it, and everybody's situation is going to be so different. So, okay. Anything else that you really wanted to touch on before we share your resource?
I think there's one other thing too that I didn't talk about with if you are using this service. One thing I want to touch on too is because I talk a lot about like, the anxiety before you even have your leave, and obviously like during the leave. But there's also a huge benefit post-leave. When I'm covering for these stylists coming back, especially if it's been 8 weeks or 12 weeks, it's almost like when we all came back from COVID, where it's like, okay, well, everybody needs them. So how do I even deal with this? So that's one thing too that has proved to be a huge benefit, is like by utilizing the traveling hairstylist, it really is able to categorize how you come back in a way where you are not overdoing it right off the bat, but also a way where you're also servicing your clients is still in those like intervals that they need. Because there's always about, I feel like it tends up to be like maybe 30% of everybody's clientele is not going to use the traveling hairstylist. They will wait for you. They don't care. Whatever happens, they will wait for you.
Yeah.
But then you take that other 70% of clients, and if that's something that I'm being worked out in your time, you already can take that 30% and be like, this is who I'll book my first couple weeks coming back.
Yeah.
Then we'll build the first set of clients that the traveling hairstylist has done. Then with that leaves rest. So it kind of creates like a really like harmonized post leave, which is a beautiful place to be too. Because I know people who have gone on leave and come back and it's like a
you're
madhouse.
Pumping, your body's still healing.
Used to things and everything like that. So that's just like one other thing I just wanted to touch on, because I think that is a huge asset also to using the traveling hairstylist. That again, it's not talked about a lot, like leaves in general, but even just like coming back to leaves and how that can feel. And it can feel stressful for a lot of people who are trying to navigate everything and get everything like almost rebalanced in their schedule again. So that's just like one other little thing I wanted to.
That's great. So Leisha does have a little freebie, because obviously she's trying to build her email list to stay in touch with the industry for everything she has going on. So obviously if you're listening to this and you just want to DM her, shoot her a DM, email her, talk to her. But if not, we'll have in the show notes also talk a little bit about the freebie and what they're going to get.
Yeah, so I made a freebie and it is called, oh shit, what do I do? Like I broke in, insert body part here. And it's basically like and I get like not everybody may not be in this situation, but it's good to keep this freebie like in your back pocket, save it in like a special folder in your email, because you just never know if a friend, somebody like in the industry might be in a situation where something happens and they have to quickly assess their clients. So included in the freebie is some direct verbiage for your clients. It's the steps to take to determine how you prep for your leave. And then obviously at the end of it is something that if you do need to utilize a resource like the traveling hairstylist, you can get connected from there. So there's some verbiage in there, some steps in there to sort of just like get yourself in like a game plan so that you can focus on what you need to focus on for that time off. So that's
beautiful. We'll have that in the show notes. I'll have that in the YouTube description. I'll be shouting that from the rooftop. And if you just go to Leisha's page, or what's the traveling hairstyle?
It's the traveling hairstylist on Instagram, but then I have a website. It's just thetravelinghairstylist.com.
And that is plural with an S. Yes. Hairstylists.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hard to hear in audio.
It is.
But
it's for the purpose of the future. Yes. There will be more than
one.
More
than just her. I love the manifestation behind that. Okay. I feel like that was incredible. I loved hearing the story that led up to that. And I hope that this lands with who needs to hear it. And even if you guys don't need these services, you don't want to be part of the team, I hope that I'm glad we went to that story part in the big magic idea.
Yeah.
We all have a little bit of that. And I hope that it was even just like inspiring, like how to take an action.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, if you have anything that you want to say, whether it's traveling hairstylist related or chat or anything like that, definitely reach out to me anytime. I'd love to chat. So
thanks for listening, friends.
Thanks for having me.